last session before lunch. We will try to keep it lively to keep you help keep you focused. If you're somebody who gets up in the crack of dawn like Mary and myself, you're already on third breakfast by now, so I know you're going to want to make it for lunch as soon as you can. Again, my name is Leighton Christensen. I'm the data curator at the National Transportation Library here with my colleagues Mary Moulton and Xin Wang. And we're going to talk today about the Freight Data Dictionary, which we recently installed at the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, which gives like the very broadest overview, is an attempt to harmonize and bring together metadata across currently 28 different data sets about freight, which is important for us in transportation, but with hopes to expand on to bigger and better things as we move forward. So, freight can mean a lot of things. I used to be a truck driver, never a boat captain, but freight includes everything like things you wouldn't actually maybe think about. Transportation is also defined as pipelines because you're transporting oil or gas or something from one place to another through a pipeline. That's also falls under transportation. So there's all sorts of types of metadata and data being captured out there by very different transportation organizations. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what we do at NTL, a little bit about the project background, and then Mary and Xin are going to take the deeper dive into the functions and to implementation of the project. A little bit about NTL. As I mentioned, we are an office in the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. Specifically, we are the Office of Information and Library Sciences. OILS, if you're hip into those acronyms that mean something, and of course it's transportation related, so it's even extra funny. And we've been around now for 20 years, and we are an all-digital library. There is no physical collection at the National Transportation Library. You can come and visit. Too far. It's not all that exciting. But we also now provide data services as well as the reference and research services that we've provided for a number of years, and ever more into networking, especially around data. So we are an open access digital repository, and all of our items are in the public domain without restriction. And so it's a little different from the previous presentation about dealing with sensitive data, although that will be in our purview coming up. And again, NTL, as a federal library, we are called out in several sections of code and law to do a number of things, including help to manage data and public access publications and data. Most recently, those are the latest things that we've been tasked to do. And part of the reason that I'm here at the National Transportation Library is all around public access. If you're looking for publications and data sets from the National Transportation Library, from the DOT, you can go to the Repository and Open Science Access Portal, or ROSAP, and we provide that URL down at the end of the slide deck. And this is our catalog, where you can download or link directly to publications or data sets. Most things we hold on hand, but the platform isn't quite robust enough for some of the very larger data sets, so we link out to those to our storage. A little bit about the background of the Freight Data Dictionary project. So the National Academies of Sciences had a project suggestion and funded a project a few years back, starting back in 2013, on the need for a national freight data dictionary. And this is through the National Cooperative Freight Research Program, NCFRP. And some of the things that the folks decided that were needed and why we needed to have this centralized and controlled data dictionary, because they wanted to support all the reasons that we want to be able to have good, standard, robust metadata, right? Because it's not just that transportation is difficult because there are basically 51 departments of transportation, each at a state level. There are also regionals and citywide and super regions that have transportation organizations. They're all collecting different kinds of data, and bless them if they're using a standard to collect any of that metadata. And so when you start to bring that stuff together to make decisions about how to spend transportation money on infrastructure or improving access for people who don't have it, and 45% of Americans don't have access to any public transit of any sort, you want to be able to spend the least amount of time cleaning up the data and understanding what the metadata means, and you'd rather be making decisions. I will tell you, as a former truck driver, I have a very different idea of what a truck is than if you have a pickup parked in your driveway. Four wheels does not make a truck. And that same difference of opinion exists across transportation organizations. And so what's a boat? What's a ship? You're getting into those differences in metadata matter. And part of the job of the Freight Data Dictionary is to help us to harmonize those definitions. So if we can't agree on a standard, we can at least know what the Department of Transportation in Iowa means by a truck versus what the folks at the Federal Highway Administration mean by a truck. So we're trying to bring those things together in one location and help decisions be made. So out of NCH FRP Report 35, and that's available through the National Academies, if you're interested, bringing the project first brought together about 28 readily available freight data sets and gives examples of how they're used. And it presents an inventory of data elements as well as a glossary of definitions so that we can start to compare these and harmonize. And it also helps us to expose those differences in definitions and in data elements, and that's important for when you start your cleanup and your mashup of data. So what we have built is a searchable web-based application that we hope is sustainable. That's sort of the future of the project as well, is how do we make this sustainable and extensible, moving beyond just freight, but into other areas of transportation and useful for folks beyond simply those of us at the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. Why is BTS interested in the Freight Data Dictionary? Well, we are a freight and transportation statistics aggregator and publisher. That's our job as one of the 13 federal statistical agencies. And so BTS projects are represented in the dictionary that draft our data sets and our definitions and whatnot. And within the project research proposal period, BTS was identified as a logical host of the Freight Data Dictionary because we're a government agency. We're going to be around for a while. We have a long-term interest in freight data and the metadata behind it. And the Freight Data Dictionary can provide an architecture, a potential model and platform as we harmonize our own metadata in BTS. So in 2016, BTS started a data management and data curation project, which I am part of, and we've been documenting every data set that BTS produces. And, we're running into all the usual problems you run into metadata. Folks on one side of the office maybe aren't using the same standard for dates as folks on the other side of the office, or the same abbreviations for dates and other things like that. And so we want to harmonize that data, and where we can, bring those things into standard, great. But where we can't, we would like to have a BTS-wide data dictionary so that we can go and look and capture that knowledge and go and look and say, okay, when we're doing something about, when one office is talking about trucks, they mean this rather than this, or pipelines, or whatever you have. And, we really hope to extend this beyond, other modes. So I am now going to turn it over to Mary to start talking about functions and features.
Thank you. I'm Mary Moulton, and I'm a digital librarian at the National Transportation Library. My responsibilities involve the management of the digital repository, Rosa P., the collections. I'm responsible for collection development, and policies and the technologies that go into making that available. I want to say a word about the repository because we had some excellent presentations that came before ours this morning and some questions about discoverability of data. We're doing some very innovative work at NTL with the repository. You know about our purview. We're very well defined with what we do and very tied to our legislative mandate. We're linking publications and data sets through our repository. And Leighton has been a big part of making that happen, but also migrating to the repository platform that we have now that went live earlier this year. And we're indexed by all the major search engines, Google, Google Scholar, Science.gov. We're also discoverable through WorldCat, which is a gigantic worldwide catalog of library holdings. So there are lots of access points, and because we have the full text of the publication that accompanies the data set, that's a really good access point for discoverability. And in addition to the metadata that we're putting on the data, we also have the context of the publication that's linked to the data. The other thing that we're doing for all government publications is we're putting DOIs on the publications and the data sets, so that aids in discoverability and also in citation. This is a whole other talk we could have given this morning, and if you're interested in a follow-up, our contact information is at the bottom of the presentation. So please contact us if you want to talk to us about what we're doing. I'm going to really quickly go through the user interface. This is very simple, and this is publicly available. It's available on the NTL website. Anyone can use it. So this is phase 1 we just implemented this year. This is the front page. Believe it or not, it's very simple. You get in there and you can immediately start a search in the search box. We chose a search term here, origin airport. This would be the point where the freight starts to be moved. And when you do a simple search like that, you're able to see different sources here. There are 2 sources of information. One is you can see all the data dictionaries, and the other source, the other tab, would be the glossary terms. I'm going to go into some detail here. So here's what it looks like, the entry for the data dictionary terms. It immediately tells you that there are 349 data elements, and they come from 14 sources. Leighton mentioned that this is 28 sources that we're pulling the elements from. You can open this up with the drop-down menu, and you can actually see the sources, and you can go to the sources. And here's a description of the actual data, actual metadata here, metadata elements. And if you look at the bottom here on the table, this will, well, first of all, I need to tell you what's in the table. You can, there are descriptions of the data and also the data type. And at the bottom of the entry, there are all the elements are listed. You can click on those elements, and you can see similar elements, and you can also see a complete profile for each one. Here's an example of the similar elements, and you can see here that they're all listed here with the description and also the data type. Here's an example also for the same search on origin airport, the table profile, the complete profile for the data. If you had clicked on that other tab back when you did the search, then you could see the glossary terms, and actually this is really extensive. And you can go through these, and if you click on each entry here, you'll be able to see the definition from the glossary. So the thing that I think I really want to focus on, I know I went through that really quickly, and I also want to let you know that there's this advanced search feature. I would invite you to go to the tool and play with it. Unfortunately, and Shin will mention this in his portion of the presentation, we don't have very good documentation for users, and that's one of the things that we want to work on. If you end up going to the Freight Data Dictionary and you have comments or you have feedback for us on that, as we're working on the next phase of this implementation, we would really appreciate any criticism, any comment, any needs you might have that you could forward to us. So a little bit about the architecture. A lot of sources were evaluated, and these were not just government sources. Some of them were commercial. Out of the big pile of freight data sources, 2 commercial sources were selected, and the remaining 26 were all public. Several of them came from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. Over 6,000 data elements were selected, and for each data source, the minimum required entities for each data source were a name, a table containing the elements and the elements themselves. Here's a list of the sources. You can see that they're really very diverse. I'm not going to read those to you. The classification schema is based on, it's a role-based classification schema. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, we referenced the NCFRP report 35 that resulted in this freight data dictionary, but there's a body of literature that came out of that study. There are actually several reports that led up to the actual what you see here. We've listed several of those in the bibliography, and I know that probably most of you are not interested in freight data, but this is a really good case study in how this implementation came to happen. And it was a big project, and it took place over many years, and a lot of people were involved. They evaluated different schema, the researchers, and decided on this RBCS, which organizes and categorizes data elements across multiple data sources. That's our goal here. The top-level groups were derived by analyzing all of these classification schema for all of the different data sources as part of the study. And then the secondary level groups are used to differentiate the data elements. They identify the objects, and they describe the features of the objects. Here's the top-level schema. And there are 9 top-level groups. And I'm happy with all, as a librarian, I'm happy with all of these except probably the last one, unclassified, miscellaneous. But they had to make a 9th category that was unclassified to accommodate those elements that couldn't really fit in the other 8. But what I really like about this, and when you do any type of taxonomic work, you can, this is a way to check on your top-level groups. They should tell a story that describes your data set or your document that you're trying to describe through metadata. And here's the story for freight data. The commodities generated by the industry are moved by various transport modes from one place to another along the transportation network within a time period. During the transport process, a chain of possible events may occur that involve various stakeholders or individuals. So you can tell the whole story of freight movement using that top-level variables. The secondary classification is used to differentiate within that top level. And so I'm just going to go through these really quickly. There are time elements, there are place elements, we have an origin, we have a destination. Those place elements need to be identified. There are features to the places. It could be a river, it could be a city. Commodity elements, we want to describe what's being moved. Link elements, are we using a roadway? Is it air? Is it water? And those have names and they have features. Mode elements, there are many different ways that freight is moved. It can be by water, air, truck, rail, pipeline, and we want to identify those. We want to describe them. Industry elements are following standards. The most common ones that were identified were NAICS and SIC, and also to describe the industry features. Also event elements that describe something that could happen that relates to this freight movement, and again, features that describe the event. It could be a safety event. It could be any number of things. The last one here is human elements. And when I work on taxonomies, this is something that I always recommend, although it's seldom followed. I have problem within, it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. I'm having a problem within my own agency getting them to adopt this. But in past positions that I've held, I've used a people facet when describing objects, and I would say that you're missing something if you don't provide a human feature to what you're describing. And I'm just saying that as a librarian, is that I see this is often missing. I'm delighted to see it in this taxonomy. The glossary, they compiled 13 different glossaries into one source so that you can get the definitions for these terms. There are over 13,000 terms, and so you can get a definition and you can also see where the terms came from. These are the recommended data types. I think these are very familiar to all of us who are working with data. And I'm going to turn this over now to my colleague Xin Wang, and he's going to talk about how we put it all together at the National Transportation Library.
We got this whole package from University of Texas at Austin in 2015. And at that time, I haven't learned anything about this until 2016, end of 16. And I realized there's such a thing on the shelf because at that time the budget issue and the effort needed to do this. And when we got the whole package, I think the university made a big effort for the documentation. It's a whole package, the CD, and contain at least 30 documents inside. But one important thing, they didn't give us the source code. So then when we got the project, we started with a limited time, only give us 6 months and limited resource to get it done, suppose in 70. Then we put, in last minute, put this package, this project in the 17, 18 budget. Then we got it. Then for the source code retrospect, re-engineer from the, we did set up the whole system in our testing environment within the DOT security zone, and we make it work. But the thing is changed when we gave the university what kind of a platform it should be. At that time, we have our own server within the DOT system. But when the time is 2017, we are in a Microsoft Azure Cloud, and the database is from Oracle to a SQL Server. So it's totally changed. And with the problem, we don't have the source code, then we think how we can convert it. The only thing is, the reverse engineer and look how the system works. Because they gave us the file is binary. The binary, you cannot read it. And you have to use Verizon, the reverse convert back to the code. But when you convert it, all the important information, human can read information, like the comments, how this part used, and the input, output, those things is not there. So you only can see the function, how it works, and you look at the inside the code and figure out what you can do with the new environment. That's what we did. And in the 6 months, we got it done and then put it into the system. And right now, we're thinking about the second phase. We had a meeting, TRD Transportation Research Board annual meeting. At that time, the Free Data Committee had a meeting. Then the people really interested in this and gave us some ideas and for the next phase. That's why we started the next year. We're going to put effort to give the second phase and with improved functionality. And like right now, you cannot really display a single element source accordingly. And so you only can search the whole the 13,000 vocabulary as group and pull out. Because there's a 28 elements resource, we have to display it for the convenience of the user. And another thing is the standard of the dictionary. From the literature I read, I didn't see any mention about the data dictionary standards, just like I didn't talk about. So this is a good time when we are put in detail the project plan. We're going to put this part in it. And another thing is this business model is within the free data community. And we already got a group of people, the stakeholder. But the problem is the lack of leadership. It's supposed to be our director, which is detailed from the Library of Congress. And he was here for 1 year and make a big effort on this project. But he went back, and our position is still not filled because of the restriction. So that's why that's the one issue we have to deal with. So 3 of us have to fill the gap, and also our current the director, who has 2 offices to operate. So you see, he really cannot put too much effort on this. But the BTS did support us and try to give us money, give us a resource as much as possible to get us move forward. The reason is they want to use this as a model for the other products, because it's one body. Then you can have many hats. You can duplicate the instance, get another dictionary. Immediately, we got interesting from FAA. They want to have a FAA that dictionary. So because of the lack of leadership, the conversation was dropped. We have to reinitiate to keep talking, and on the other hand, we keep our project going and make this product perfect. Yeah, that's our current situation. So it's basically what we're talking about. The whole milestone, how long take us, it's from early 2017 and to this year in May. We finish all. And the lesson learned, the first was the source code issue. The second one is security. It's hold us back for 3 months for the security part, the source scanning and back and forth. Because it's for us, it's the first time put this thing in Azure Cloud, and also it's the first time for DOT. So the security is very tight. Every step, there are several people involved, and in the what's called the request change board, at least we attend 3 meetings in that board meeting, and finally, after they proved, the whole board gave us applause. You see the funny thing. It shouldn't take that long, but some people are really concerned about security, unnecessarily, I think. But after that, we make an effort. We got all green lights for the scanning. So right now it's in production. And also we got suggestion. People said, BTS long time ago, 20 years, thinking about have a United States illustrated transportation dictionary. and because the effort is too big, they gave up. And then the people mentioned about the EU Commission. They have illustrated transportation dictionary, but it's in a Word format. It's 8th edition right now, and they're going to release a new one this October, I think. And I contacted with them. They're willing to give us as long as you can. They said, you can do whatever you want, only give us credit. I said, sure. And what we're going to do is convert to a database and put a U.S. definition with it. So it save us time. And we have an idea maybe using a Wikipedia kind of platform, get all the stakeholder contributor, give us idea and the new terms, and from this one to build a United States transportation illustrates the dictionary. That's our the initial idea after the FA, that's a dictionary. But first, we need to finish this one, get it to the next step.
So
yeah.
if I could mention just a few of the challenges that we have ahead of us, when you have a tool like this, it's and that's dependent on language, and language that's found in publications and data sets. It's a living thing. Language is a living thing. It needs to be managed. It needs to be updated. And this data had not been updated for several years, and then we worked on implementing it. So we do need to develop a governance model and a way to accept submissions for new terms. And there's a lot of outreach that is involved in this because we want to, we've already spoken before our freight data community, and we want them to participate in the maintenance and the growth of it, as well as to do outreach to the other modes that have data dictionaries that could, be part of. We envision this growing to include other transportation data dictionaries. The last thing is, unfortunately, this freight data dictionary is all in U.S. measures. So we would like to integrate it with the EU freight data dictionary, and that's another one other barrier that we need to break down.
That's people in the TRB annual talk about, like even Canada and Mexico.
Right.
There's an issue for the data exchange.
Right. It's not even for
countries,
North America.
Even in North America. Not even mention about the EU.
Over lunch, I'll tell you how when I was a truck driver, U.S. truck driver, the first time I drove into Canada and saw a bridge labeled 3.6 meters, and how scared I got because I wasn't sure if my truck was going to hit.
But the sources were in U.S. measures, so it was, we worked with what we had.
Earlier you said there was two definitions of truck.
Oh, there's a lot.
Oh, there's many.
Many.
We use that for, and in fact, many of you probably know our administrator, Pat Hu. She always uses that variable as she'll stand in front of a group and she'll say, "What is a truck?" And it's not easy to define that. We all have our own, our own concept of what that means. You go to information about the source that you can cite. For the source.
For the dictionary.
Yes.
You can.
But the tables are extracted from the source.
It is the major purpose for this is for the data exchange. They want if you're doing research for something and you need several resource data, but the definition of each the element to the database level is different. So that's why they try to explain to you. There in the system, if you click, they will give you even the type of data and even the bits, how long it is, what kind, very detailed. So for the user who's doing research, I think it's very helpful how you manipulate the data. At this time, we don't have a back-end interface for individual entry input yet, and that's why it's the last one in the plan as a collaborative form. We assume in the future we will have a group task force within the free data community, and the people we identified, accepted, they can contribute, put the word for discussion and in the future, and or maybe they already did. Try beyond the 28th resource. They said there are other resources we needed to include it, and right now we haven't done so yet. So that's why the built on that part, the system will facilitate the business model, how we make this dictionary grow.
The functionality of this tool is not very sophisticated. We'll all admit that.
It's limited.
But our administrator, we had a director who was on detail from the Library of Congress. He was really hell-bent on getting this out there. And I think it was the right decision, even though it's not perfect and the functionality is not where we would want it to be. But through the exposure and getting feedback, we are going to have funding this year to enhance and to move into phase 2. And so I believe it was the right decision. And we presented this to the Great Data community, and we have their support as well. So this is something that it will be many years that we'll be working on this and making it better.
That's ITS JPO, Intelligent Transportation System. We have an office inside OSTR.
This is a great question, though, and this relates to what I said about needing governance and needing people who contribute to this tool. When you have a language resource, it's not really functional if it's static. It has to grow. It has to grow with the type of research and technology that's being made available. So we do have concerns that this is a few years behind. One of the things that I do, I'm laughing at this because all the language around connected vehicles is something that I'm kind of involved in right now. Our Transportation Research Board is part of the National Academies of Science. It's our where we all get together, everybody in transportation. And the Transportation Research Board also maintains a transportation research thesaurus, and I'm on that committee. And we are, at this point in time, I think it should have started 10 years ago, we're working on getting that language set around autonomous and connected vehicles, and there are certainly huge implications for the movement of freight, huge. I actually have a meeting with some people at DOT next week to work on some of this terminology. So I love your question, and I wish we had it 5 years ago, but it speaks to my point about how you can't just create a language tool and then set it aside. You have to keep working on it.
All right. So I know folks are restless and want to get on to lunch. So please contact us if you have questions, and I will at least be staying for the afternoon, so you can come and take it home. Thanks very much for your time and attention.